Hello, Facebook world. Hi, it's Brandy with the Thriving Relationship here for Tuesdays with Thriving. And this is the last week you get me all to myself before Miss Shannon returns. I believe she'll be home soon. So, a couple things. We are, social workers. We like to work with people's emotions. It's really funny. We're actually not the coolest business people at times. And so when we planned our registration for the Sun Valley Retreat, I'm not sure why originally we didn't think like, oh, we should end registration day on a Tuesday like this when we're going to interact with the community. And so we've actually extended the registration for our Sun Valley Retreat through tonight. So I've added the link into the description of the video. So if you find that you were still hoping to get registered for that, that is available. And if my sources are correct, which I'm sure that they are, we have offered a discount. We've got another discount for the retreat to kind of end the registration through tonight. So I believe it's $50 off. So if you've been debating about it, that's maybe a really great incentive to get on there and get registered. We would love to have you come join us. We're just starting to finalize the details for the retreat. But yeah, so there's that little bit of information. The thrivingrelationship.com is our website, and the link directly to the retreat is in the comments, or not the comments, the description. So hi, Carrie. Hi, Brittany. Thank you so much for being here and playing with me, ladies. Tonight we are talking about patterns. Oh, I feel like this is kind of what we focused on all week long. I'm just like dreaming about patterns now. It's been exciting. So patterns, there's all different types of patterns, right? We get patterns, traditions, habits, they're pretty interchangeable, I would say, at least in the realm of kind of what I'm hoping to talk about with you tonight. I'm also gonna bear with me while I pay attention to the comments section. I'm gonna keep checking that to make sure I don't miss them this time. So yeah, the kind of patterns I really wanted to focus on tonight are ultimately those patterns that somewhere along the lines we started to pick up. I focus on these when I work with women. You guys know that I kind of spend my day-to-day stuff is with folks who are dealing with substance struggles. And so oftentimes hand in hand with substance struggles are backgrounds of trauma. And so with the ladies especially, but I mean with the men, but I do a lot more of the ladies work. We spend a lot of time kind of looking into what the history of trauma was like and what type of coping mechanisms came out of, especially if there was childhood trauma. And so when we get digging and we kind of look at these, the abuses that happened, the traumas that happened, and the way the different women learn to cope with them, we kind of start to identify those. And that's usually kind of a big cue into like where this pattern came from, right? I put together the blog for this week. So if you haven't checked that out, feel free to pop over there and look at that. But in that blog, I talk a little bit about a couple different patterns that are pretty common themes that I see in my office. And one of them has to do with if you have, say you have a young girl who gets hit by a parent, if she voices any type of opinion or anything like that doesn't just kind of roll with whatever mom or dad kind of feels in the house. And so early on, this girl learns to keep her mouth quiet, not to share her opinions, not to speak up, because she learns how to physically or avoid some physical pain by keeping quiet. And you can see where that type of pattern, you roll with that in childhood, you roll with that through adolescence, and you start to form different relationships, especially you get into an adolescent, teenage, young adult, and into adulthood. Those patterns don't just magically go away once we find out, that we do have power and that we can now share our voice. And so, this is a really familiar experience I've got with some ladies that I've worked with where they're filled with fear of sharing what they think. They're filled with resentment for never being able to share what they think. And so this combination of fear of sharing what my opinion is and the resentments with not ever having my opinion heard, fuel really, I don't know, a kind way to put it is interesting dynamics in relationships, right? It could be challenging for a partner to kind of understand how to meet your needs if we're afraid to say what's going on. And so you can kind of just see where a pattern like that could be a struggle. And so it was really funny as I was prepping to kind of do this live tonight. I sat down with Brandon. He's on here now, so now I can talk about it. And I was like, hey, talk to me about, what are some of my patterns? And that's kind of scary because I'm a pretty quick to defend person. So anyways, Brandon was incredibly kind and gentle with me, and we kind of talked through some of the patterns that he feels like over the 11 years that we've been together. Oh my gosh, 12 years now. The 12 years that we've been together, that he kind of picks up on. And so it was funny. I bet you only in the last 3 or 4 years, he dubbed one of my patterns. It's called the ghosting. And what we kind of talked about tonight was when I get uncomfortable with things. So whether it's uncomfortable with emotions, uncomfortable with experiences, whatever the situation is, that once I hit a certain level of discomfort with it, I just go quiet, and, oftentimes Brandon and I aren't, if it's between Brandon and I, and obviously this is where his most experience of it is when I'm irritated with him. And I just go quiet. And so he'll text me and I won't respond. He'll call me and I won't answer. And I just go quiet. And so finally, I don't know, a couple years ago, he tells me, he's like, I know that you're going to ghost me. That was kind of how he started his text message out. And that was the first time it really came to my attention that, like, what do you mean ghosting? And then I kind of realized what I was doing. And so then tonight we just really digged into it. Like, okay, so why do I do that? Like, when do I do that? When I feel really overwhelmed, when I'm feeling really prideful, when I have a kind of a perfection complex at times. And so I think times when I'm afraid that I'll say the wrong thing with Brandon, I really don't like to have to say I'm sorry. And so instead I'll just be quiet. I just won't say anything. And actually, as I'm saying this now, I can even remember with my parents, my mom would tell me, she's like, yeah, you weren't really a liar. You just wouldn't tell me, when I was being a teenager and kind of being difficult. Like, this is a pattern that's been there for a while, is I'll just hold my cards really close to my chest. And so I was like, okay, so I understand this is kind of when this pattern comes out. So what are what's the benefit for me to do this? Why do I still engage in this? And so, being the perfectionist that sometimes I am, obviously one of the ways is in the moment, I don't have to be wrong, right? Like, I don't have to say, hey, I'm sorry I acted that way, or gosh, maybe I shouldn't have done that, or I should have dropped the bike on your FJ, Brandon, and now the top is scratched, right? All of Facebook got to find out about that before I admitted to it. Another thing that it protects me from, or kind of in the moment, is this idea that thanks, Brandon. I get to protect these vulnerable places in me, right? If there's parts of me that I'm afraid will be rejected, right, then I just don't talk about them. I just keep them really close to me. And so that's kind of the payoff, also one of the payoffs for ghosting. And then ultimately, Brandon's already kind of led to some of the answer. The answer ultimately is it gives me control of the situation, right? I'm in a stressful situation where I don't feel like I have much control. I'm feeling overwhelmed. My emotions are feeling strained, stressed. And so if I just quit talking about it and I just really disengage, in a way, it gives me some control in a situation which I don't feel like I have a lot of control. So you can kind of see where some of those benefits come out. Now, let's look at the other side of the coin. What's the problem by me ghosting when things get uncomfortable for me? Well, clearly, as anyone who's very close to me knows, I build resentments. I stuff stuff inside. I don't talk about it. And so then those resentments just kind of keep sitting under there, and they're just boiling under the surface, right? If I never get to talk about it. And so that's a really big problem. I hold this stress in, and so like I've been dealing with migraines since I was 18, and so physically I'm getting strained there. I get migraines stressed on my neck, and I clench my jaw real good. And then I also because I'm not talking about these things that feel hard or difficult for me with, say, Brandon, or if it's someone else I'm feeling struggle with, I jilt myself and whoever that other person is of the opportunity to feel connected, because I don't trust them with those emotions. I don't trust them with those experiences. I don't trust them with those fears in me. I never get I rob myself of the opportunity to feel heard or to feel understood by, let's just use Brandon for example right now. And then the worst of it is that the way this cycle works is it fuels itself, right? Like, because I've taken all of this uncomfortable emotion and feeling, and I've shoved it down and not talked it through. It just sits there just under the surface. And so then it doesn't take very much for the next experience to happen where it all kind of explodes back up. And once again, I'm really overwhelmed really quickly, potentially really unnecessarily, but because I'm not processing the things that I'm dealing with, or not dealing with. You can kind of see how that pattern just really fuels itself. So anyways, the purpose of sharing that pattern is just to kind of really give you an example of how these patterns are so common. We all do them, and we probably have a lot of patterns. Brandon and I kind of dug through at least another one, and I can think of a couple others of patterns that I have, and I can tell for me, like, a big push for the patterns that I have is to really grab control back in situations where I feel like I'm losing control. And it's not that difficult if I kind of look back through my childhood, different experiences that I had where I felt like things were out of control. And so it makes a lot of sense now that, like, that's a coping mechanism I learned to use early on, was when things feel really chaotic and out of control. I found things to help give myself the power of feeling like I'm in control. The problem is they really aren't effective anymore. They give me kind of a fake idea of being in control, or a fake idea of really being empowered. And so you can see how that pattern really undermines my ability to actually better connect with my husband, or this same exact pattern plays out with my teenager at times, right? And so that's really important that I know at her age, it's really important for me to grab a hold of those opportunities to connect with her and be able to have these more vulnerable and intimate conversations with her. And so you can see where if I don't pay attention for these patterns, they could actually really create a wedge and push away the people that I most want to connect with. All right, I'm going to pause for a second, just kind of look at comments. Are there typical patterns for men who come from trauma, like you explained with the women? Well, the pattern that I explained for the women, I would say actually is, I don't know that it's necessarily gender specific. I've worked with several men who could have gone through or have gone through a really similar experience of, you get knocked around by dad or mom's boyfriend, and you just learn to bite your tongue. Now, not all people play that same pattern out that way, right? Someone might get knocked around and they pick up a different pattern, and instead they get really aggressive. And so that any slight of something that might feel like it's disrespectful to me or something like that, that might elicit a pattern where someone gets really explosive and physical back or something like that. So I'm not sure that I would say there are specific patterns necessarily that would just be for men versus just be for women. I think it's called suicide and drinking. And there's Brandon's. And this is why Brandon doesn't get to come be on Facebook Live with me. We talked about that too. Yeah, I really don't know that I could put gender specific patterns. I think we all learn at different ages just kind of how to cope with different experiences. Now, I'm trying to think if there would be I'm not sure who's laughing at me, but I'll take it. Yeah, I think I'm going to avoid kind of stepping into that this, this gender has patterns this way and this gender has patterns that way. I would love to kind of have dialogue if someone kind of has thoughts on that. There might be some common themes one way or another, but yeah, I don't feel like I could do that. So, okay, so we've talked about the patterns. So how do you kind of do something different about the patterns? The way we do that is we have to start by giving ourselves enough space to be able to witness the pattern. And so what that means, like for me personally, it means that I have to really be able to be super compassionate with myself and recognize I'm human and everybody has these type of patterns and none of us do it right every single time. And so it's okay for me to make mistakes. It's okay for me to lose my cool sometimes. It's okay for me to give my family the silent treatment at times. And I want to come back and I want to try and do better next time, right? And so I always urge, we have to have compassion with ourselves to be able to look at these things so that we can be gentle with ourselves when we catch the pattern. If we're going to be, really critical of ourselves or critical of those around us, no one's going to be very willing to look at those patterns, right? Like that was something I had to really breathe into when I talked with Brandon tonight about what patterns do you see in me was, this is a learning opportunity for me. I can teach this stuff and I can also see it in myself, so I can have this conversation with Brandon and be compassionate that, yep, there are still some of these things that even though I sit down with couples and I sit down with individuals and I help them work through theirs, I have some of these things inside of me as well. And so being able to have a great deal of compassion with yourself, and obviously the awareness, I probably should have talked about that first, but actually I think compassion is really important. And so having that compassion gives ourselves the space to be able to kind of gain the awareness of, oh, I just had this interaction and I can see what I did and I'd really like to do it differently next time. So that's kind of my two thoughts on patterns and how some of those, less enjoyable patterns might play out in our lives and kind of where they come from. So obviously, feel free to make comments, ask questions. I'll kind of check in on the thread throughout the evening if other things come up, other comments or ideas come up. I'd love to interact with you more. And I think we're starting to run out of ideas for topics. I can't remember if we've made it through everybody's or not. If you have a different topic you'd love for us to be able to talk about one Tuesday night, please share that, and I'm sure we can get that included in our lineup. And again, we are extending registration for the Sun Valley Couples Retreat through this evening, and so feel free to go to the website, thethriving-relationship.com. I think it's /relationship retreat, actually takes you directly to the Sun Valley website. It's $50 off through registration now, or through till we close registration, and go get signed up and come spend a couple days there with us in a beautiful location where we just take time with the couples and we kind of gently dig into topics that oftentimes when left to our own devices we may avoid just out of some of the discomfort. The whole thing's not uncomfortable, but we will gently help you kind of be able to have some of those conversations that maybe you've been putting off. So, all right, we'll check one more time to see if there's any more winky faces or comments. My husband's so active. Thank you, honey. All right, Facebook world, thank you so much for playing with this with me tonight. And I can't wait. We'll see you next Tuesday night. All right, everybody. Bye.